It's a joy, as I said, to be with you. My name is Sirota, and I have lived in Baltimore and New York City and many other places, and we retired, my husband Bob and I, to Maine, where we had bought a house in 1986, and but 2 years ago we retired here, and we are loving it. So I love all the seasons, including winter, and we're very happy when people say, "Oh, isn't winter awful?" And my husband says, "Yeah, don't come." Anyway, these are really interesting readings because they all absolutely pull together. And oftentimes when we get around this time of the year, the readings sort of don't work with each other, but these really do. And the message is really clear. And it's all about love, and it's really annoying. Because you have to love people you disagree with. You have to figure out how to talk to somebody that you're furious at. And if it doesn't work to talk to them directly, you're supposed to bring a friend or two and have this conversation that actually the purpose of is not to drop your anger on them, but to help them change their ways, which is really annoying. Because, you know, in COVID, it was sort of nice. We could stay in our own houses and we can't talk to anybody, and you could talk over the phone or over Zoom, but that was sort of different. And these readings are saying, you've got to figure out how to get along with people. That's what it means to put on Christ. That's what it means to be a Christian. That's what it actually means to love. It's not just loving people you like. It's actually trying to love people you don't like and figure out how to have a relationship with them. There is a show on Hulu called The Bear. This is not about a bear, and it's not Cocaine Bear. It's not that movie. But this show, and the language is terrible, so Father Nutter's gonna be mad at me for even suggesting it. But it's about an excellent chef who goes home and tries to run the family business, which is sort of a diner, and tries to figure out how to get along with these people in what is revealed to be a very dysfunctional family and dysfunctional diner. What's great about it is that it reminds you that in order to work with anyone else, you have to get along with them and you have to respect them. And one of the first things that he does is have everybody call each other chef. Not just the important chef that's the real chef, but everybody. In other words, if everybody is helping to prepare food in different ways or cleaning the dishes or whatever, everybody is a chef. It has to do with respecting yourself and respecting each other. And the other thing that strikes me about this show is that there's a sign in one of the fancy restaurants that says, "Every second counts." And at first it was like, oh, that's so exhausting just to think about it. But then to think about how we waste time all the time. We all do. And you sort of have to sometimes. And you can say you're actually meditating, like I like to do really great art that is a jigsaw puzzle. And it's sort of like I'm wasting time, but I get a lot of thinking done while I'm trying to figure out the colors and this artist and what's actually going on. It's sort of interesting. The Psalm 119, verse 37, makes me think that maybe they knew how terrible our television was going to be now, because it says something like, don't waste your time on worthless things. And we do it all the time. We just sort of, stare at it. Can't believe that we're seeing the same ad for 8 million times and we're still looking at it. But so here we have our lives And we're trying to figure out what our lives are all about. Romans is really clear. You know, for Paul, this is like the most important book of theology he wrote, because he's really trying to get them to understand what it means to be a Christian and how you actually have to change your behavior. That having a certain moral seriousness is actually part of being a Christian. You don't just do anything. And he's telling them you can't covet, you can't have adultery, you can't steal, you can't be nasty to people. And then he says, you know, the fulfillment of all law is love. And if you're just loving to people, you won't be sinning. You won't be breaking the law, because love is the answer to that and the fulfillment of that. Ezekiel is a prophet, and he really doesn't want to do what God keeps telling him to do. And God says, you know, if you don't do this, it's going to come down on you. The blood of the evil people will be on your head. It's nasty. It's really nasty. But he has to pass on the fact that the house of Israel, that he is calling them to turn back from their ways, rather than still saying, oh, forgive us, and going on merrily with what they're doing. He says, why don't you stop doing what you're doing? Turn back and listen and love each other. It's the same message. The message from Matthew has to do with how you treat someone in church. I just read a commentary that talked about coffee hour and it talked about fights over what kind of coffee and whether they have soy for creamer or real cream. And those are sometimes the spats we have in church. But it's worse than that, because it has to do with who's in control and who has power. And that's what these little arguments are always about. Are you more important than I am? And Jesus is saying, let that go. That's not what's important. What's important is that you care for each other. And going through this whole thing, if you have to talk to the person you're mad at, and then you have to bring two people, and if that doesn't work, you have to bring the whole church in, and if that doesn't work, then let them be to you as a tax collector and a Gentile. Now remember, Gentiles became Christians, and Jesus even invited a tax collector into the inner circle. So that doesn't mean you're condemning them to death. It doesn't mean you're excommunicating them. It's simply saying you're going to take a step back and you're going to wait. But you know what? You're still going to pray for them. And you're going to pray for yourself, that you actually are invitational, that you have actually put on Christ, that you actually care about them. And they're beginning to understand how loved they are. A number of years ago, actually in 2008, my father and my mother were both living in a nursing home at the end of Long Island in New York. And my father died the end of that July. And it was 3 months later, and we were still grieving, and I was in charge of the headstone and what it was going to say, and I hadn't gotten around to doing it yet. And I was called up on a Saturday by the hospice nurse, who said, your mother's blood pressure is highly erratic. We think that this could be the time. Now, the interesting thing was that I was running the congregation at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine at that time, and we had just had a session with a wonderful Episcopal priest, Nancy Roth, and she had us moving together and dancing, in circle dancing, and doing some lovely things that helped us to sort of connect with each other. But I'll never forget the one thing she had us do. She said, okay, now close your eyes. And she said, and hug yourself. I'd like to try that right now. Everybody close your eyes and just hug yourself as if you love yourself. And take a deep breath. Okay, open your eyes. It feels like love, doesn't it? You can actually love yourself by hugging yourself. So we had done that exercise that morning, and I'd never done that before. And I'm driving to pick up my brother, my younger brother, who had just flown in from Seattle. He was supposed to be running a workshop downtown. He had to cancel it. He was furious. So that we could drive to the end of Long Island. I think my husband was in China at the time. And so there was a lot of tension, and it was pouring rain. It was a thunderstorm. And I'm driving out from New York City to the end of the North Fork. It's a good 2 hours in the pouring rain, lightning and thunder, and my brother is sound asleep. He couldn't stay awake. And I really wanted him to talk to me, and he couldn't talk to me at all. And I'm feeling so bereft and so abandoned. It's only 3 months since our father died. How can our mother die? She was so full of motherly love. She was a deacon in the church. She was a wonderful woman. And all of a sudden, I felt these arms hugging me. And they had been my arms. I'm driving, but I could feel them hugging me. And I knew it was God, reminding me that I was loved, and that loving myself would allow me to love others. And so we got to the nursing home. They didn't think my mother was dying. The hospice people did. So we sat with her and then went to the house we were going to stay at, and my brother said, well, she's not dying. And I said, she probably is. I'll get you up in the morning. So I woke up the next morning, and literally a voice said to me, get up. It was 7 o'clock, get up, so you can make it in time. And I got up. I could not wake my brother. I was so annoyed. I went off, got some coffee somewhere, probably at the Hellenic Snack Bar, and went to Peconic Landing. And the staff had put on my mother's beautiful pink sweater with her diamond cross, cleaned her up, and they said to me, her eyes were closed, she was waiting for you. So I sat down. I was going to sing her morning prayer. I took her hand, and she literally flew off. I mean, it was astonishing to me. She was happy. She was at peace. She was ready to go to her Maker, and she just wanted me to be there. And she had waited. It was awesome. So after praying with her for a little more, I went back to get my brother. And he said, what's the hurry? And I said, she's still warm. Come on. So I finally dragged him there. And of course, he, threw himself on her. He was so upset that she died. And a deacon from the Greenport Lutheran Church showed up to give my mother Eucharist. She had no idea my mother had died. And I was supposed to be the celebrant at a Mass at St. John the Divine that morning, and I was really missing the fact that I was going to miss that service. And this wonderful deacon gave Eucharist to the three of us and to my mother. And it was an awesome experience. But that hug that I could feel, I felt the whole day. Knowing that you are loved is the beginning of being able to love other people. And we all have to struggle with that, because we hear these voices in our head saying, you're worthless, you're no good, you didn't do what you were supposed to do, who are you, who do you think you are? And those are demons, guys. And you know, the voice of your parents or your teacher or whoever puts you down, that is not the voice of God. The voice of God is that other voice that simply says, I love you. You are loved. And once you know you are loved, you are able to love others. So this show, The Bear, which is about a restaurant, is about this chef trying to figure out how to love himself. And he honestly can't deal with anybody else until he figures that out. We're all the same way, and that's what all of these readings are about. They're about not wasting our time on earth, because God knows, God is love, and God knows the best thing for us is love. We are so happy when someone loves us. We are so happy when we feel love. We are so happy when we can relax into a warm embrace, and we just forget it. And the thing is, when you feel loved and when you are loved and when you love, you will know what God is calling you to do. And then you will feel joy, because all we really want to do in our whole life is to be used. It's not about things. It's not about clothes. It's not about where we live. It has to do with allowing that tremendous love of God to get in so that we can be part of the children of God. It says, put on Jesus Christ. He knew how to love. Put on Jesus Christ. God bless you. You are loved. Amen.